Getting jacked absolutely changes your life. It accelerates it in a way, especially as a man. You get to experience so many things that you didn't have the opportunity to experience before. Like, it just opens so many doors and it changes the way people treat you. Overall, getting jacked is a huge, massive boost to your life. There are some downsides to consider if we're going to be very honest in this video. I'm going to go over those a bit later on. But for now, let's cover the biggest changes first. So the first thing about getting jacked is that, it's a huge win physically, right? Like you've added so much muscle mass, you've become so much more better looking and aesthetic. It's a huge physical win. The even bigger win is mentally. What happens to you when you get jacked? You see, most guys without rigorous physical challenge live quite unmotivating, depressing, sort of directionless lives. You see, men need physical challenge. We need that physical discipline in order to feel accomplished, in order to feel satisfied. For me, I remember I was in university and I was just being told to study, and it was like this grueling, never-ending work that I had no motivation to do. And so all I did was play video games all day, and I had no direction on what to do in my life. It's nearing the end of COVID, and that's when I discovered, self-improvement, Hamza. And most importantly, the biggest thing from that was the gym. You see, as soon as I started hitting the gym, I had something to look forward to. I had something to build up and work hard on. You see, as a man, that's everything. That's going to give you confidence. It's going to give you clarity. It's just going to make you feel, you'll understand that it's just the way that you're meant to live. As I started building more and more muscle mass, I could see how fast I was climbing up that scale, that look scale. Whether I was a 4 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 or whatever. As soon as I started building muscle mass, it started going up very, very fast. And what came with that was that people started treating me very differently. I had a lot of respect. I had a lot more respect from other men, and I was taken a lot more seriously. When I had something to say, people would take me seriously. At the gym, people always came up to me and talked to me. Here in Thailand, basically every day, there's someone coming up to me being like, yo, your body's sick. Like, they're trying to dap me up. They're asking for, about me, my story, my advice, whatever. And so, socially, it just changes everything drastically. I remember before, when I was in high school, or when I was in university, like early university, before I hit the gym, a lot of times people don't really respect you in social circles. I specifically remember, people would be talking in a group and you'd be part of that group. Like, I'll just be there because my friend is there or something. And they'd be talking about something, I would say something. And then it's like, they just ignore you. It's like, what the that would never happen now. But like, you can see how like those people would treat you like, you're below them. Whereas now it's like, if I say something, it's like the conversation stops, people listen to me. So you can see how like socially it's a very different story from back then to how it is now. You go from being like low social class to being like, much higher in the hierarchy. The next big thing is like with women. So growing up as a young man, especially in Canada, it was very, very difficult to like get women, especially if you use like Tinder. You get like one match every like 3 weeks or something. Obviously, maybe Tinder's not the best place, but it's you never really got attention from women growing up. You never really got the respect or anything. People weren't, attracted to you. But as soon as I started, building the muscle mass, making huge physical changes to my body, it was a night and day difference. It was like they were everywhere. They were all, they're always, giving choosing signals. They're, getting excuses to talk to you. They're coming, if you're in the gym, they're coming up next to you and like working out next to you. You can notice them looking at you, whereas before they might pretend like you didn't exist. I actually had a core memory just come up like last week. I just remembered it. Like, I don't know why. I think maybe I saw it happen to someone else, but I remember before when I was like younger, if I looked, sometimes I would like look at a woman, like I wouldn't even be creepy or anything. I would just like look in their direction, or maybe they were talking to me or something. And I remember they would always be like, let's say that they had like their shirt, they would like instinctively like cover up, or they would like, let's say as a low cut shirt, they would like pull it up a bit, but now it's like, it's very much the opposite of that. If I'm talking with someone or if I look at them, they like open up to me, they look at me. If I go up to them, sometimes I'll go up to people to talk to them, and like they won't walk away, like they won't move, even if I'm like right next to them in their space. Yeah, it's a big difference. You see choosing signals all the time now. Like, they'll always be walking in front of you, trying to get your attention. They see you. So it's a huge change. And let me tell you, like, it's been really accelerated. And obviously that's socially, but let me tell you about like, if I go out to, like not the club or something, there's literally like, I'll be talking to a group of friends and then suddenly they'll be like, pulling out my shirt, like grabbing my chest, all that kind of stuff. Like there's so many of them. It's kind of hard to believe right now. I wish I took a video, but this kind of thing happens regularly now. It's at the point where it's like you have to like limit yourself, otherwise you're just constantly going to be getting lost in the sauce. So like the version of me 10 years ago or even 5 years ago could not even like imagine this kind of thing happening. That it's like completely out of the picture, like out of the question, night and day difference. So I can understand, if some of you find this really, really hard to believe, but trust me, like it's what's going to happen when it comes to women. Like you're going to have too many options, and it's actually on you to have discipline to like push them away. And then obviously with men, yeah, they respect the physique a lot. They respect you a lot more. And lastly, we started off the video with this, but we're just going to wrap this one point up before we move on to some of the negatives. But the biggest thing is also like yourself, your confidence. Before you're kind of like this scared, anxious, kind of like mousy person. You never feel like confident in your own skin. You never feel certain and secure and comfortable. But like once you do something that's really hard and challenging, and then you see the way other people are treating you differently, it really does change your perspective on everything in life. And it just gives you so much more clarity and calmness. And it just opens so many doors socially, with women, but also just with friendship groups as well. Going over some of the negatives, there is some perceived negatives that come with getting jacked. The first thing would be like food situation. Back when you weren't into fitness, you were like this like just skinny or like skinny fat guy. You didn't really like ever think about food. You just ate when you're hungry, and then that was it, right? You didn't think about nutrition or anything like that. But once you start to build some muscle mass, especially once you get jacked, your nutrition, you have to be very accountable for, the kind of calories and the food you're intaking. You have to be accountable for it. So you have to make sure that you're getting the protein, you're getting the calories. Now, I think a lot of people like overshoot this by a lot. Like you'll see people like there's like those Instagram reels where like their office is having a party and then everyone's eating like pizza or cake or something, and then they're just eating like their homemade like vegetables or whatever. I think that's crazy. Don't ever do that. It's not that important unless you're like about to compete. I remember when my office had those kind of things, and people would be, and like I'd be eating cake or like I'd be eating pizza. People would be like, "Oh, is this your cheat day or something?" I'm like, no, it's not that. So your diet, it needs to be accounted for. So you need to understand, okay, I need this many calories, and I need this much protein. But it doesn't need to be like refined. Like you have to watch every macro, watch every single calorie. The big thing is, like I said, it just needs to be accounted for. Because I remember, so for example, one day I went to Muay Thai. I didn't really eat anything that day. Like I ate a little bit before Muay Thai. You can't really eat before Muay Thai, otherwise you can't do anything. And then I remember after I was like lazy and really tired, so I just ate maybe a little bit, like maybe 500 calories, like a burger or something. And I went to sleep, and I remember I think I lost like 2 kilograms that day or something crazy, because you lose a lot of weight from Muay Thai, especially water weight, but even just the calories, right? You burn a lot, and then I didn't eat that day really. And I remember I lost like so much weight, and then I remember looking in the mirror, my arms felt like noodles and stuff. And so it was like, and it took me a while to like recoup that and get that confidence back. So yeah, your diet's something that you always have to be accounting for. It's not a terrible thing, because it's like, it's just a responsibility. It's just part of who you are now. So for me, it's not too difficult. I just account for it. I make sure I'm eating enough calories, make sure I'm getting the protein. But going from that Muay Thai point is the next thing is, body dysmorphia. That's another big thing that you have to deal with. Your physique is not always going to be better than it was yesterday. There's going to be times where it's going to get a little worse, or it's going to plateau out a bit, or maybe the lighting isn't good, or maybe you got sick or something happened, you got injured, and your physique's going to fall off a bit, or maybe you're going to lose a bit of muscle mass or gain a little bit more fat. And so the issue is that it can be very like mentally depressing to see that kind of thing happen. And I see it all the time. When people are trying to bulk up, they're too afraid of like getting a little bit more fat, so they can't bulk up. They can't, get the muscle gains that they want, even though it's good for them. They can't do it. And even for me, it's the opposite of that right now. Like I keep telling people, don't have these mental blocks, but yeah, when it's time for me to cut, it's like I keep thinking I'm getting too small. I'm going to lose all the muscle mass and lose my identity as a person. That I'm Beeshmar, like the jacked coach. But if I cut too hard, I'm going to lose the muscle mass, and then everything's going to go downhill. So body dysmorphia is a very real thing. I think a little bit of it is good because it kind of makes you push yourself. But the issue is, I think for most people, it holds them back, and it also it's very negative for them, for their mental state. So it does exist, and that is something to watch out for. And I'll say the last thing, this one maybe applies more specifically to me, but for athletics, having a muscular body, it doesn't help. Maybe it helps for some sports more than others, but you know, for a lot of sports, it doesn't help at all, or in fact, it might even hinder it. Like, especially for example, like we'll use the Muay Thai, right? When I go to Muay Thai class, it just feels like, first of all, the muscle doesn't really give any advantage. It's just, fighting is mostly about your total body weight, and then you fight in your own weight class. So having the muscle mass, you know, if I'm 80 kilograms, but I'm muscular and lean, if I'm lean and muscular, but there's another guy who's 80 kilograms and he's kind of just skinny fat, I'm not gonna have any advantage on him because we're both the same weight. It's mostly just about, you know, your skill, your technique, and your conditioning. So muscle mass, you know, I would say it even hinders me. You know, it makes me less agile, it makes me less flexible, and it just adds extra weight to my body. So yes, obviously, if I was to fight, you know, a less muscular version of me, I'd probably win because I'm just heavier. But you know, in terms of overall pound to pound, it doesn't do anything. And you know, when you look at sports like soccer, it's just like, you know, you're just way too top heavy. You just lack the, you know, the agility. Muscle mass is just going to slow you down a lot. You're going to be less agile. You're going to be less balanced because you're too top heavy. And I would say just overall, most sports, you know, you need to train lower body more than upper body. But whereas for bodybuilding, getting jacked, it's more so upper body, especially when it comes to the looks. Most people care more about the upper body compared to the lower body. That's kind of what like we use to define the physique, right? And so, you know, it's a bit of a crossover for me. It's a bit of a dilemma because I do want to be, you know, athletic. I do want to play sports. You know, that's part of my identity. But I also want to be very muscular too. I want to be jacked and I want to maintain this physique. So that's also part of my identity. So it's a bit of a crossroads. They kind of work against each other at some point. So that can be a dilemma. You know, it's not going to be a dilemma for most of you, but further down the road. Anyways, guys, I think we covered most of the things on this video. I didn't really cover much about the process or anything. I more so covered, you know, the benefits, what happens after you get jacked, the good and the bad. So if you're looking for more of a step-by-step process, if you're looking for more guidance on how to do that, then check out my free checklist in the link below. It's going to teach you how to gain the next 15 pounds of muscle mass. Make sure you have all of those crossed off so that you can maximize your gains. But yeah, other than that though, I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something. But anyways, with that being said, I'll wrap this video up. Please like the video if you did. Subscribe to stick around for more content just like this. I help men go from skinny to jacked. And I'll see you guys in the next one.